I'm really excited to pop on to the next panel. And so this panel, the larger theme of it is movement building. And the participants on this panel are people that I have been blessed to meet and work with in person. In 2018, we all won a fellowship by the Center for Native American Youth. And it was the inaugural cohort of the Movement Builders Fellows. And in this fellowship, they're presenting a panel to connect the environment and movement building in our communities. The goals of the fellowship when we were in the fellowship were to educate broader social justice movements about our tribal communities, our challenges, our strengths, and the strengths that Indigenous people can bring to movement. Together in the fellowship, we were able to develop strategies together to strengthen the voice of Native youth in broader movements and to promote the contributions that we wanted to do. Through our work and through the work of Center for Native American Youth, we seek to inspire other Native youth to take actions on the issues that matter most to us. And so our panelists today will be speaking to the work in their communities and how you can overcome challenges for your people. And we're so excited to have Mr. Chance Lee Rush as our facilitator for today. And so with that, I will pass the mic on to you and let's get started.
Hey, everybody. How we doing out there, ladies and gentlemen? Wow, give it up one more time for Dayami Thomas, man. We do appreciate your words. Hope everything is going well with you out there. Day number 2, ladies and gentlemen, of our movement building right here. Man, yesterday, we got to hear from Damon Bellholter, did such a great job, amazing basketball player. Very grateful and thankful to be able to serve as the MC. And I also want to thank Maka for, talking about our 2018 fellows, so great stuff there. We have an amazing lineup this evening. And I'm very grateful and thankful to have the opportunity to introduce these 3 people. And I'm going to turn over the portion of the program over to them. With us tonight, we have Joyla France. She comes to us from Crow Nation, ladies and gentlemen, up in Montana. She is currently a third-year student at the U of A, getting her PhD in the Department of Environmental Science. So without further ado, Joree, I'm going to let you introduce yourself real quick. Go ahead there.
Shoda Valaja Eugene Machler Bishbala Dupa Pilgo Achbidacho. Was the Malachia be Urishik Dela Com Bichukal Tawagarik. Hello everyone, my name is Joyla France. I come from the Upsalaga Nation. I was born and raised on the Crow Reservation located in southeastern Montana. Excuse my dogs in the background. I am in Montana, and so sorry about that. But I am a current third year PhD student in the Department of Environmental Sciences. So I'm back and forth between Tucson and the Crow Reservation because my research does focus on the Little Bighorn watershed, which is located on my reservation. So I do a plethora of work in my community, mainly focusing on women and girls, but bringing in the environment and water and our river systems into that as well.
Wow. Well, thank you for that. Hey, I'm Hidatsa as well. And I know that Hidatsas and Crows are the same people. The Hidatsas grew corn and the Crows grew tobacco. So somewhere in there, we got to be related there somehow.
Oh, yep. I believe it.
Yeah. And I'm very proud of you for all the work that you're doing. And, the best of luck as you conclude down there at the U of A. And I know some wonderful things are going to happen. And we're going to come back to her for some Q&A as well. So also here with this, I know we got to switch over from his iPad to his phone or phone to iPad, whatever it may be. But we also have Michael Charles of the Navajo Nation. Dene is committed to increasing Indigenous representation in higher education and climate activism. Also a PhD student at Ohio State University, at the Ohio State University. He's also aware of current climate change negotiations and their impact on Native peoples. Very influential in Indian country. And Michael, Charles, how you doing, man? Why don't you introduce yourself a little there?
Sure. Thank you. Appreciate the introduction, Chance. So Yate, Michael Charles Yaneshe, Bilagana Nishlash Hibashichin. Additionally, hello everyone. My name is Michael. As Chance mentioned, I'm Dene. Navajo, and so my clans are from my dad's side are Salt people, and then the Mexican Navajo, the Nakai clan. I currently live in Columbus, Ohio, as I'm finishing up my PhD. This is my 5th year, and hopefully should be wrapping up in 2021. So I'm excited to wrap up this journey and try to figure out kind of what's next. I've been able to do so many different projects on pretty much a lot of different issues across Indian country, and I'm really thankful for that. But I've been able to do a lot of work with programming for students in STEM, Native students, trying to kind of build out that pipeline from STEM education from kind of high school all the way through graduate school. And I also have been able and lucky enough to participate with the International Indigenous Peoples Forum on Climate Change, working at the UN, and have been able to participate in a lot of the negotiations and really learn from a lot of our kind of elders who've been doing a lot of the environmental fights kind of in that political stage for years. And so I've been really thankful to learn from a lot of elders from Indigenous peoples from across the world. Yeah, and I also recently was able to work with CNAY on, they had a task force on missing and murdered Indigenous women and how culture and cultural values can actually be used to protect our women and children. And so, yeah, I'm really excited for this. It's been such an honor to meet Maka, Joree, and Austin, and we've had a great time, and Jarette, who couldn't join us today, but it's been a great kind of journey to get to know everyone. But yeah, thank you for having me.
Well, I mean, I'm proud of all 3 of you guys, you know, but man, 5 years, I know you're ready to wrap this up. Without a doubt, I know you're ready to wrap it. Are you a big Ohio State football fan now?
I'm not a crazy football fan, but I did have season tickets for two years, and now I think we're found out we're playing football.
You're going to come back, yeah. I think Mr. Phil, your quarterback, he kind of had something to say about the Big Ten and having you guys come back. That's pretty good. Mm-hmm. So, well, good. And, you know, he's going to be sticking around too. Michael beat this for the remainder of the evening. And, you know, he brought up that Jarette Werk, he had some family issues. So, you know, let's keep him and his family in our thoughts and prayers. And, you know, it's always good to, you know, to visit with Jarette. And I know that he will connect here soon. And, you know, when things get up and running for him. So, you know, our thoughts and prayers are with him and his family. Also, we'd like to introduce this young man. We got Austin Wyaki. I hope I said that right. I do apologize, Austin. Not. He's Zuni and Dene, and he's a grassroots organizer. He's worked to create change and advocate for Native families throughout the Native American Voters Alliance. He's traveled all through New Mexico, all across the country to create new strategies for outreach that fits the geographic, economic, and cultural areas for needs in Native communities. Works with high school students and encourages our youth to get involved with civic engagements, you know, and just giving back. So I'm sure he has a little more to share. But Austin, I'd like to turn this portion over to you, man. Let's introduce yourself, sir.
Sure thing. And thank you, Chance, for that introduction, and Maka for allowing us to be in this space. My name is Austin Wyaki. I'm a coach at Zuni and Dene. I'm from New Mexico. I think I'm not a college student, not a PhD, but I do political work here in the state of New Mexico. I feel very privileged to be able to do civic engagement. We're wrapping up the census right now. We've conducted, I don't know how many phone calls already, you know, working on trying to get people politically involved and involved in the system as it stands right now, trying to make sure that everyone counts and has a voice, that they feel represented and that their issues are represented, and that we come from a place where we feel grounded and respectful and like we have a stake in our political landscape. So that is what I do. I'm currently just finished wrapping up my first campaign and about to start my second one. So looking forward to it.
Hey, thank you, Austin. And man, I cannot believe that I have the privilege for the next 45 minutes to interview three powerful, great Native leaders. And before we get into the interview, I also want to, everyone out there who's listening, or if you want to share this somewhere in there, go to hashtag TELS, TELS 2020. Hashtag, let people know that you're visiting on screen, or have people join, have people visit, whatever it may be. Also, you can get credit if you click on to the website, and I know that Maka will share that a little later on, about, you can get college, you can get credit. I think it's UAF credit. There's a button somewhere around here. There's a button. So anyway, there's that, but, be sure to use those hashtags. So, let me just start off with you real quick, Austin. I believe it's, it's really loud right now in Indian country that, that we focus, in Native country, that we focus on this census. When is that deadline, and why is it so important for our Native communities to fill out the census?
Yeah, so the census will determine the next 10 years of funding for Native country, for any federal funding that we're going to receive, as well as representation. And this is everything from like school books to roads and water, all that kind of stuff that is really important that we deal with on a daily basis. The census starts to help us figure out where we need to delegate resources. So an undercount is a really, really huge risk. We think that there's been around a 5% undercount among Native people for the past 20 years, which translates to a couple $1 billion, billion with a B. It is a lot of money that is coming right out of the pockets of Native people, and right out of our water systems and roads, schools, all of that. And it's just because people could not fill out a 10-minute survey. As far as the deadline is concerned, it has moved around a lot.
I know.
The initial deadline was supposed to be in July, which got moved back for obvious reasons. And then it got moved up to October. And then about a month ago, we got news that the deadline had moved up yet again to September. So we've got about 7 days left, 6 days left until the census is officially wrapped. And it kind of pulled the rug out from a lot of us. Yeah. We thought we had an additional 31 days to work, and that got cut substantially short. Especially right now where we're not trying to knock on doors, we're really, really trying to make sure that we're staying, socially distanced, trying to be creative about our solutions. But the truth is people need to be able to take that initiative on their own to, call your census people, call the Census Bureau, go online, figure out a way, if you haven't filled out your census, to fill it out right now.
Mm-hmm. And you said it roughly takes about 10 minutes, or how much time would you?
It's 10 questions. I think I took 4 minutes with mine. At most, it'll probably take 10 minutes, unless you got something real confusing, like you have several names. But other than that, it's generally really quick.
Right. Joree and Michael, I'm going to come to you here in a second, but I need to know this. Why do you think they cut 31 days off?
There's some thinking about that politically, whether there is an intentional undercount of Native people and people of color, because that's who's going to be most affected by it being cut short. It's going to be, Black people, Indigenous people, and the immigrant community, as well as children. Those are the real places that we see undercounts, and places where the extra 31 days really helps for us, just to make sure that we're going to all those high-risk people who really just need that extra time to be reminded and walk through the process. It is simple, but it can be a little bit daunting when you're first logging on to the census.gov.
Good. Hey, thank you for that, Austin. Thank you. And we got to get that filled out. Yep. We have to be heard. This is how we're going to get our funding. And I'm just so proud that the balance tonight, of in the environment and the census and the outreach, the activism, things like that. I'll go over here to Joree real quick. Did you want to add anything to this about the census, Joree?
Yeah, for sure. I actually worked with CNAY for the past month and a half, and did a project of my own to bring more awareness to the census, which it's extremely hard for me to do work remotely. I mean, COVID-19 brought even more challenges with that too, but I always do my best to bring awareness or do whatever I can with the tools that I have. And so CNAY, super grateful for them for always providing the support and the resources that we need. And so for the past month, I worked with Ben Pease, who is a renowned Upsal artist who has some incredible work. He's amazing. And very grateful for him for supporting this project. And initially we wanted to do a big mural and bring youth on to figure out the concept and do the mural ourselves. But COVID-19 prevented us from doing that. But we wanted to allow people to tap into their artistic abilities, but to also figure out a way to promote the census or bring awareness within their own families or with their peers or whoever might ask about the murals that they're doing. And so I was able to get 6 murals back from 6 youth, and we actually put them up all around the reservation. So they're up on our res, and Ben is finishing up a mural on one of our buildings right downtown in Crow Agency in our big downtown where everyone can see. But
gas station.
Yep. And so with that mural, it actually brought a lot of discussion. People were wondering what Ben was doing, why he was painting this. And so it was good for him to be doing something to show his artistic ability and show art for our people to view and feel good about, but also bringing that discussion forward with our people. And so for me, I did see an increase in our response rate. However, it's still not where it should be. I see that some tribal nations are super adamant about being responsive for their census. And I just think that as Indigenous people, we need to be doing this for ourselves. We need to be thinking nation-oriented, solution-oriented, and there's these little details and these little steps that can help us get to that, and the census is one of them. And like Austin was saying, that's a lot of money that goes, that isn't coming into our communities that we can definitely use to support whatever it is that we need, whether that be our healthcare, our schools, our roads, these public uses, public transportation, anything that we use as a public is being influenced by the census. And so we need to do our part in ensuring that we count, because we've been here this whole time, and we need to make sure that people know that we are still here. And so it's our duty to ensure that we count.
Amen. You're right. You're right on the money. You know, you talked about COVID, and I like how you tied all that in, why, you know, environmental studies is so important on tribal lands, and how we can get why we need to get our young adults involved. You know, what is a way that we can get a lot of our Native youth involved with environmental science?
For me, I've been really focused on trying to develop partnerships or working with or collaborating with people in my community. And so I think it really begins with the younger kids. And so I've had some really great opportunities to do a couple of projects within the elementary schools here on my reservation. I do a lot of smaller projects that touch on the environment. Like I did a mapping project, and we mapped our reservation and then Montana, and we're just gaining these basic skills and letting them be more aware of the environment, or these tools that they can use to view the environment, and use that as a tool to help them understand ways that they can protect it. But also bringing in that cultural aspect to it, because we also created a map. This was a National Geographic project, but it was interesting because we created a map that was entirely different than other projects that other schools were putting out. So our maps were showing and reflecting who we are as Upsal people, while these other maps were not. So that was a really rewarding thing for me, because we had these fourth graders learning about place names or these areas on our reservation, and they were able to place it on the map themselves. And that just brought me so much joy because they were able to know where these places were and the actual place, Upsalaga place name. I mean, there's so many other ways that our youth can be involved. I also did a project where I did a basketball tournament and a community cleanup. And so I brought those two basketballs, huge on the reservation. So I did both of them, brought them together and tried to do a community cleanup. And so that was another project that I did. I mean, there's so many ideas, and I encourage people to be really creative. And find resources. I know that there are people who are willing to help. It might take a little work, but don't be discouraged. Keep trying, keep moving forward, and I just encourage everyone to do what you want to do, even if it's a crazy idea and crazy project. I've had crazy ideas, and they've been super fun, and they've always been rewarding.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, man, hanging out with a bunch of crows. All my buddies were crow at college, and a lot of crazy ideas. One thing I know that they love to do was play basketball and hang out outside. And I remember a long time ago, one of my buddies, he was like, hey, man, let's run up a hill. And I thought it was like a little hill. We went down to the Black Canyon, and we ran all 5 miles up it. And I never cried so much in my entire life, you know. But
it was a beautiful view, though.
Yeah, I didn't pay attention. I was sitting there, my lungs were burning. I didn't pay attention. Hey, moving right along here, Michael. There's something that really stands out of what you're wanting to promote, and that's Indigenous representation in higher education and climate activism. Why do we need to have a representation when it comes to higher education, and get involved with climate change? Because that's something that we really need to hone into as tribal people.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start with the higher education first. And I mean, the biggest reason to me is that it just opens so many opportunities depending on what you're interested in. It gives us a whole nother kind of place to excel as Indigenous people. And I think there's so many barriers and obstacles that have been kind of put in our way and have prevented Native students from going and getting involved in higher education, or even just that affiliation with education. A lot of that goes back to even just those first relationships between that formalized education system and Native peoples, especially through the boarding schools. And that's kind of created this huge wedge and distrust for a lot of the formalized education systems. And as things have kind of evolved in terms of the academy or the universities, it's starting to learn kind of this value of diversity. And I think we see it across businesses and organizations across the country. But I think one thing I've really learned is how valuable Indigenous minds are, and the creativity and the different perspective that they can bring to academic research is so important. And we think a lot about how most Native people, when they go to school, a lot of people stick within being able to kind of retell their story, and there's a lot of Native scholars within Native studies, like their own American Indian Studies or whatever that program's called. And I think there's a lot of value and importance to that because it helps us really make sure we're shaping our own narratives. But I think it's also really important that we are also going out and really impacting the other academic communities, whether it's science, technology, engineering. I think there's so many different aspects that we can bring in who we are. And I think the more that we're able to learn how to bring in who we are, the more the universities will have to adapt. And it's going to kind of force, it's really hard to show up as the only Indigenous person in the room. And I think a lot of us have experienced that in many different ways. But, this is now my 9th year at an institution, and I've never had another Native person in my department, whether it was a student or a teacher. And I think that's really telling of how we can really kind of transform and overwhelm these educational systems. And I think there's a lot to learn. And when it comes to academic research, I think there are so many opportunities, because part of what you have to do is really bring in your own original idea and do something that's never been done before. And a lot of that is kind of open ground. If you are finding creative ways to bring in your perspective, your worldview, who you are as an Indigenous person, and you try to combine that with pretty much any other subject, a lot of doors can open. And I think that's how a lot of even my research has developed was I work on sustainable design within a chemical engineering department. But one of the biggest things that we know as Dene or Navajo people is that the importance of hojo and of balance, of beauty. And when it comes to environmental design, there's so many doors that can open when you realize, well, in this engineering, we kind of draw a box around a system and it stops there. We assume that kind of all of our emissions are going into this giant sink and that it doesn't matter. But as Native people in our cultures, we know that does matter. And so a lot of what my research is bringing in ecological models and then making sure that chemical engineering is actually bringing in the geography, the impacts on local communities I mostly focus on air pollution, but it just opens a lot of doors if you can really tap into cultural values and how they can overlap with these other subjects once you learn to master them. So, and it's really important to really build that pipeline because it's hard to figure out how to do that by yourself. But if we have a whole pipeline where Native students are able to leave and understand how to use their education to come back home rather than this whole relationship we've had where going and getting a degree usually means that you can then only get a job off the reservation. There's a lot of work to do to kind of really transform that whole pipeline so that Native students have Native mentors and Native professors are able to advise Native students. There's just a lot we can do. So I think it's just really important that we kind of keep having that conversation and try to really push people to challenge themselves and take on these different opportunities.
Yeah, yeah. So as a climate activist, a few months ago, the Corps of Engineers told DAPL, get out and get the oil out. As a climate activist, how was you feeling on that day? What was you thinking?
Yeah, I think it's important to really have a balance, and to me, it's the Army Corps of Engineers really, doesn't need to be there if there's no recognition of the sovereignty to have permission to be there anyway. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't even really come to an engineering decision or a science thing. It comes to really overstepping boundaries. And the more that we are able to understand and help others understand the value of Indigenous sovereignty, these conversations can start to kind of twist. And I think, especially within climate change, we kind of think that like Western science or academic science is the only way to know and the highest value of knowledge. But as Indigenous peoples, we know that our culture has different ways of telling similar stories. And I heard an elder once kind of say, everyone has been thinking of it backwards, where we kind of think that our Indigenous knowledge is trying to catch up to kind of tell and is trying to catch up to academic science, but it's completely the other way. Basically, we have universities trying to study and understand things that we've known this whole time, and they just didn't like the way we said it. And I thought that was really powerful. There's really these two different knowledge systems between our cultural knowledge systems and these academic institutions, and we shouldn't be really seeing that as one has all of the power to make a decision, the other doesn't. Mm-hmm. If there ever is conflict, we should be able to try and understand how to use two different knowledge systems to really come to an understanding. And I think that's where the conversation isn't happening. Mm-hmm. So yeah, when it comes to things like the no DAPL, it's more than just, can we make a checklist to see if this pipeline will leak? It should be, do we even have a permission to be here? And right. Those are all the things that were skipped before it ever got to that point.
Right. Like some of these things, a lot of people think that they're a victory, but should have never been a fight in the first place.
Exactly.
Hey, Austin, you elaborated a little bit earlier. We can all relate obviously to the pandemic and what the coronavirus is. The coronavirus has stopped the world, it seems, affects us all in different ways. How has working virtually helped your mission and at a very crucial time, very pinnacle time with the elections coming up and the census needing to be turned in, registering to vote, how has virtually helped your mission, or what part has it played? Can you provide us with another example?
Sure. So, I'm not going to claim that it's been easy or fun to work digitally or anything. I love knocking on doors and talking to people and being face-to-face and having meetings. But it really outlined for us stuff that we have kind of known for a long time, and that we had been putting off for a while, which is like, native data is really bad. And we need to figure out how to reach out to people in more creative ways than just knocking on the doors. Like, we need to use one to supplement the other. And then all of a sudden we were pushed into, now you only have the tools of working digitally and calling phones. And it was just a lot of disconnected numbers and really just kind of tough days where you might get 3 people on the phone after calling 500 numbers. But I think more than anything, it has forced us into trying to learn new tools. And that hopefully will turn into something for the future where we're starting to invest in those things earlier before we're behind in them. We end up in the spot where all of a sudden everyone else has used the tools horrifically before we've had a chance to even begin to use them. Facebook being like the prime example of that, where we hadn't done like Facebook ads and all that stuff, and all of a sudden that's one of our primary ways we have to do outreach. So it has forced us to learn new tools and to get better about time management and figuring out, how we manage accountability and all that kind of stuff from home. But I will also just say I still don't love working from home, but it has forced us to use new tools. And I think hopefully it encourages longer term investment into those new tools. That they can work alongside some of the older stuff that we used to do, and that we know that we're preparing for, future issues. God forbid we have other surges, but that we're prepared for the future and being proactive.
Yeah. Wow, thank you for that. And it is a challenge. Some of it's fun because I don't have to travel and I can still do really cool things like this. But it's not the same. You all, you 3, well, you 4, Maka's with us too. Just being out there in front of people. That's where the great medicine is delivered, and we can do what we can do virtually. I'm so proud of you all, man. This is amazing. So I'm going to go back over here to you. I see. Let me make sure. Okay. Joree, let me come over here to you real fast here. So you said something was I liked it. I like the idea of bringing communities together. Other than financial support, how can people support Indigenous youth and the movement for Indigenous rights? How can we get more involved with our I call them young adults these days because they know so much.
Yeah, I would definitely say, okay, so I guess I can speak to 2 different audiences. For my non-Indigenous audiences, I just think there's a lot of work to be done in terms of doing Indigenous people right. I've been in spaces where I was the only Indigenous person, so I think that our visibility as Indigenous peoples on many different platforms is very low. And so I just would like to call on my non-Indigenous people to just, speak up, do your part, learn whose land you're on, because if you're not Indigenous and you're on this land, you're on someone else's land. And so I just think that's super important. But on the other end, speaking to my Indigenous people, I think for older people, for me, it's been a struggle. I've been told no a couple times, and I tried not to be discouraged with that. And so I just want to encourage older people to always have a listening ear and to always be open to our Indigenous youth, because I've been in rooms where I've had conversations with young kids and they are just incredible. Their creativity, the dreams and goals they have, not only for themselves, but just for what type of future they envision for our community, what they would like. And I think we have a lot to learn. I would still consider myself a youth. I still have a lot to learn, but I think that listening to our youth, actually listening to them and taking into account what they are saying and implementing that into our, our tribal frameworks at these bigger levels where we're thinking as a nation. I think we can learn from our youth in that way, because our nations are fighting for our sovereignty, strengthening that for our youth, for our future generations. And we have youth, we have kids that are just incredible, and we need to do our best to ensure that their voices are being heard, and we are implementing them, we are amplifying them, and acting on them. I think that's the most important thing, is we need to act upon these things that we are being told. And I'm really grateful that I've been in spaces with pretty amazing people, and I've had people who have supported me in that way, and I've been able to react and help youth, or just do any kind of project to spark creativity or just spark a positivity in them. And so I just encourage just people to listen to our youth. They may be younger, but just listen to them and believe in them.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Well,
that was a lot. I was really going up.
That's well said. Michael, I want you to kind of elaborate on this with that, but also another question. But you're so right, because our Native youth, a lot of them in communities are always put on the back burner. It's always, stay away from him, stay away from her. I was one of those kids. I was one of those kids that people were supposed to stay away from me. And all I needed was a friend. All I needed someone was to encourage me. All I needed was someone to support me. So well said. Michael, I have a question for you, but you can elaborate on that if you want to. But before I do that, I want to make sure that you guys know, be sure to hashtag Tales 2020. That's TELS 2020. Let people know that you're tuning in. Let people know what we're doing over here with this program, this cool 3-day program. Also, if you want credit, you can go online and you can do you can click on the website here and all of that. But if you're just now joining us, I have 3 amazing guests with us. We have Austin, Michael, and Joree. We're so excited. All of them are cool. All of them have some really cool questions for you. But also at the end here, like in the next 10, 15 minutes, if you have a question or if you have a statement, punch it in. Maka will read it off, and Maka, if you even want to jump in and share, make a statement or answer some of the questions, you can do that as well. So with that being said, I'm going to go back over here to my main man, Michael, from the Ohio State University. I talked to her about how we can find not only financial support, but how can we support our Indigenous youth better? What is your vision of empowered Indigenous youth? And what does that mean? And can you explain some of that?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to just making sure that young people are able to contribute and are encouraged to try things. I think there's so many times that I've seen communities say, we kind of have to do this right, or we don't want to put our energy that way. That's going to sidetrack what we're here for. And I've seen a lot of really good ideas from young people, blossom and succeed. I've seen some kind of flop and fail. But it's always been a learning experience. And I think being able to trust the power of young people and youth and whatever really the age, it takes a lot of trust from people making decisions and being able to really kind of let go of some of that power in the community. And I think I just think there's so many different perspectives, and young people bring one that's really full of energy and usually a lot of creativity. And I've done a lot of work. I would say some of the best community building I've seen around Indigenous youth were kind of led and initiated by young people. And I've been able, luckily, to work on a lot of teams that are just collaborated by Indigenous youth, where one person has maybe 2 years of experience and decided, let's put this together. And one thing we were able to do in last December was actually kind of create the first the U.S. Indigenous Youth Delegation to the UN climate negotiations. And I was one of the leaders for that, and I'm still pretty young, and I think it was just kind of, let's see if we can do it, if we can rally enough people to support it, and we were able to get grants to sponsor it. But we had people within the age of 18 to like 27, 28 that were going and telling their stories, and I think it's really important to shape people, especially people that aren't usually invited to the circle or asked, and I think that's what's so important about Indigenous voices. We know that in a lot of these conversations we've had about representation, but it's just as important to bring in those Indigenous youth voices, because there's just something powerful about bringing in energy and fresh ideas, and so many people that have been there for a long time are getting kind of used to how things go, and it's you always need to bring in people to shake that up, and really, if that's still the best way, that's fine. But I think youth are a lot of times the ones that are able to come in and shake things up.
Is it your current project that you're doing? The project you started last year, is this what you have another current project, or is this your latest project?
That was our kind of latest delegation. All of the big meetings have stopped in person for now, and so they were all canceled until almost 2021. So it'll be at the end of the year 2021 when we'll kind of talk about putting together another delegation.
Is there any virtual projects that you're currently doing with any of the Native youth out there?
I did a lot of what I had kind of shifted over was the kind of COVID organizing, and because Navajo Nation was hit so hard, that was a lot of just community building and making sure that elders had food, and making sure that we were able to kind of just use our community and connections to funnel funds that way, and make sure there was teams organizing back home too. But a lot of what I couldn't really, being in Ohio, I had very little help in actually making sure the food got from the doorstep. I was just able to do a lot of organizing about making sure there was funding for it.
Yeah, and it's so important to, plug out, kick out virtual projects. Not to kind of go anything about me, but sometimes you just have to get up and do something. I started a live stream on Facebook, and, not to seek anything, but to influence, people dealing with mental health, or influence people who are dealing with things, encourage them. And not influence, but encourage them, so very good. Very good. Thank you for doing that for our people back home, because our people are all over, our Native people are all over, so thank you for that. How about you, Austin?
I want to add in two really quick things.
Yeah, go ahead.
Number one, money. People who provide money don't provide that much money to Native youth projects. It's like the absolute truth. Okay. Young Native organizers are going to make mistakes the same way that young organizers make mistakes in every organizing field. Okay. Everybody makes mistakes. So there needs to be like legitimate amounts of money. Right before census got extended, we were planning like a youth convening here in New Mexico, a virtual one. We had to put that on the back burner because there were bigger fish to fry. And now we're in election season, so again, bigger fish to fry, but we got a whole year of basically just trying to organize and build up our power here in New Mexico, and that's something that we're trying to do. But another big part of that is like the resource analysis. Like we might have less than $1 million of Native youth resources that are specifically for Native youth in New Mexico, which is smaller than some of the general youth programs' overall budgets for one program. So I think like when we're talking about making sure that we're prioritizing Native youth, that prioritization also needs to come from the money. Like we can't just say, here's $10,000, run the best Native youth program, and when it doesn't turn out like $100,000 program, you shouldn't be surprised. Like that's not even enough to pay a salary for one person for a year. It's just not realistic. So if we're going to do that, we have to make sure that we're allowing people to work these jobs, recognize that they're going to make mistakes, but also that we're building infrastructure for the future. And it sort of gets back to what I was talking about being proactive. I'm kind of a dork. I don't like social media. But I imagine if we were a little bit more youth forward, we probably wouldn't have had such a hard time getting our social media stuff off the ground in March. Like it would not have been that difficult because maybe some people have a little bit more fun hanging out on social media in the younger age range. So we need to talk about there are plenty of Native youth, like Joree said. there are plenty of Native youth who are inspiring and exciting and doing a lot of great work, but we need to be, like, they need to be paid, and we can't just expect that tiny little grants are going to do the trick, because all of a sudden that money goes right out the door for one event, and then we're not building anything for the future. So my big outline is money. That's like number one for me, and to be intentional about specifically Native youth.
Yeah. Yeah. And, Austin, you hit a great point, because, I mean, without resources, it's just an idea, very, very valid. Thank you so much for pointing that out, because sometimes even with our youth councils or whatever it may be, they have these wonderful ideas, but you got to have resources, and that's the reality of all of it. Very good. I'm going to come over to you again to ask you, oops, sorry, I hit the wrong one. But Joree, you got any current projects that you got going on? Or you have an idea for the future? You got any projects you got coming on?
Yes, I am finishing up my census project, so super excited for the final mural that Ben is finishing up. I've actually kind of put a hold on my community projects right now. I'm making a really important step in my PhD program, going from my last semester of coursework into taking my qualifying exams. So that's a pretty big task. So I'm definitely intimidated and nervous for that. So kind of put my projects on hold for now until I get this all figured out within the next year. But trust me, I definitely have a list, and I'm always thinking of ideas of different projects to do on my reservation. I've done many already, and I think that just brings so much fire in me, and I hate to put it on the back burner, or not on the back burner, but just put it on hold right now while I'm doing my PhD and in this step with my PhD, because I think that my projects with my community are what really keep me going and bring that fire to me. So unfortunately right now I'm kind of on pause, finishing up a couple projects, but definitely looking forward to getting back on track and doing more work.
Well, sometimes things just got to be put on hold. This world, society is put on hold right now. This world's been put on hold right now. But, obviously, getting your, in your third year of getting your doctorate, I mean, obviously that's a project in itself. Wow, man, I cannot believe I'm, sitting here with 4 amazing people. I'm so proud of each and every one of you and the work that you do. Hey, listen up real quick. If you're just now joining us, I want you guys to type in to Maka. She may be having some questions, or if you have a comment, statement, whatever it may be. I'm going to turn over to you here in a moment, but also don't forget to hashtag, okay, TELS, TELS 2020. Am I saying that right, Maka? TELS 2020? Okay, so hashtag that. I just want to say something real quick, and I'm going to go around the room, and Joree, we'll start with you, then we'll go to Austin, then we'll wrap up with Michael. But, if there's any advice that I could give to you, that's what I'm going to ask you guys to do. Just real quick, give a quick bit of advice. If you could give any advice to youth in attendance today, what would that be? Mine would be is to pray, keep Creator first, and know that you're valuable, and you're here for a reason, and you're going to make a significant impact in your outreach, in your niche, in your calling. So with that being said, Joree, if you could give a last bit of advice to Native youth in attendance, what would that be?
I would definitely say prayer, number one. I always start everything with prayer. I start my day with prayer and my day with prayer. Prayer, but one of the things that I've struggled with myself was not comparing yourself to anyone else, not comparing the journey or the process of doing whatever it is that you may be doing. This is your journey. This is the way you're doing it. There's no way no blueprint on the way things are supposed to be. So just remember to be kind to yourself, forgive yourself. We are in some changing times, but we are gonna bounce back. We've always bounced back, and it might be a little challenging, but we have everything within us to do what we need to do, and whether that it might take us longer than another person, but whatever that may be for you, do your best not to compare yourself, because this is your story, your journey, and you have the pen and you are in control of writing it.
Wow. Yes, that's right. Your own journey. Austin.
Yeah, so I think for me, like number one is being grounded, finding like where you are grounded, be grounded in your values, know where you're headed, what your goals look like. If you follow those, generally you're probably not going to take a wrong step. Like be grounded in your kindness, your family, your home, your land, all of that stuff. It will guide you to wherever you're supposed to go, to the correct decisions. Stuff will get complicated and difficult. But if you are grounded in your values, you will always make the most right decision because you hold your values close. And find people who also represent those values. Like find organizations and people and leaders who represent those most closely. Nobody is going to be perfect. Nobody is going to represent those 100%, and you're going to have to fight to make sure that you're represented. But find people and fight alongside them to get what you need accomplished. Engagement is really how we get things done. Otherwise, people are more than willing to forget us. So we have to stay engaged. We have to be grounded. We have to make sure that we know where our North Star is, that we know why we're fighting, what we're fighting for. But if we do that, we can make a lot of really good decisions. Some of them will be tough, but it is important to know where you stand and that you know what you're fighting for. So that would be my advice.
There you go. Michael, last piece of advice you could give youth in attendance tonight.
Sure. I think a lot, one thing that I'm really active in is running, so I'm going to kind of make some running metaphors. But I think the biggest thing to me is really learning how to pace yourself. And I think a lot of people have heard this before, but to really go far, you have to go together, and that also might slow down. If you want to go fast, you can go by yourself. But I think pacing yourself, being able to realize that you can run further if it's a little bit slower, it's important to realize, because we see so many, especially Native youth, burning out that are taking on a lot of this. They're doing the work, but it's emotional. You're putting your heart into it, and we see a lot of burnout. So make sure you rest. Make sure you pace yourself. And then the other thing is just kind of like go for it. I think the other thing is when you're running, and maybe there are days when you take days off, and there are days when you're feeling really fresh and you're just able to run far, run fast, kind of fly through it. So recognize when you're able to go do things and do it. And then when you need your time to rest and sit back, go ahead and do that. And I think the last thing is, every time I run, I always feel like it's always a prayer. So we've talked a lot about kind of the prayer and the spirituality of our people and how that grounds us. Remember that every step along your journey is a prayer as well. And I think that's really going to help you keep that going. Check in with yourself.
Wow. Man, I don't know if I read your book. I don't know if you read my book, but I'm just like that. Like, I feel like I'm 30. I'm 46, but I feel like I'm 30. But a lot of it is a ton of rest. I mean, I make sure like that's, other than pray, like what, Joree said, like prayer, but a ton of rest. And every time I go for a run, I see it as prayer. And not just because, it's prayer, but when you turn around at the 2.5 mile mark, man, you do nothing but pray to get home, So that being said, wow, man, everybody out there, man, give these three a round of applause. Matter of fact, you three, you give yourself a round of applause. You guys all did great. So I'm going to turn a little portion of the program over to Maka. Do we have any questions or any comments from the audience?
Yes, actually, we did have a great one, which someone was asking, where can they financially donate, or where can they invest in the various programs or the orgs that you're doing that provide experience and resources for Indigenous youth. So where can they put their money?
Go ahead, down the line.
Act Blue. We're a NAVA education project at Act Blue. So that's where we're at. And there are a couple of other groups here in the state. I'm sure a lot of them have Act Blue as well. So if you're looking to support specifically that, that's a great place to do it.
Joree or Michael?
Go for it, Joree.
I didn't know that. Yeah, I have a really great organization who's actually in my community on the ground doing work. They recently just founded their organization back in April and have been really into it right when they started, and that's Weahkee Strong. And they are focused on Crow youth programming. With COVID-19, I was able to use my sources, my network, and provide some backpack in-kind donations and frozen meat boxes for them. And they went out and provided that to the community, went to our elders, and we had youth who were involved and, handed everything out. So Weahkee Strong, definitely a group on the ground doing amazing work.
Wow. Michael?
Yeah, I think a lot of the way the money flows is I think a lot of us know some of those bigger organizations. So the ones that I'll just kind of the one we met through Center for Native American Youth. Running Strong for American Youth has also been great. And I know Joree and I have also done a grant through them. And I think some of those organizations are really able to, or at least start spreading their money across the country in different projects. Otherwise, it kind of takes a little more research to find something more localized.
Good, good. Maka?
I was going to also say Center for Native American Youth, as they provide kind of a wide spectrum of issues. However, we have people from all over the country on the live stream today, and so I think Michael brought up an excellent point that, please pop that up, Austin, really quick.
NACA-inspired schools, too. NACA is great. Love NACA.
I will pop that into the chat. But I think Michael brings up an excellent point that being conscious and aware of place-based Indigenous organizations in your city or in your state is one of the first great steps. And we'll be happy to be popping more of these in the chat. And we are at time, and I just want to take a second to just express my gratitude first to Mr. Chansley Rush. You are born to be a facilitator and born to be a host. If there was a Native Price is Right, I would watch it every time I was sick home from school with chicken soup, because you bring such an energy and you bring such a dynamic to your panel that I know that people that have been with us since 9 in the morning, it's been a long day, but you bring such an energy to the panel, which I think is so invigorating. And I just appreciate the knowledge and the intelligence that Austin holds, and what I've learned from him about being so invested in your community and on the ground organizing. I want to thank Joree for the passion and the kindness and the generosity that I've learned from her as being a fellow. She does place-based work for a lot of the young feminine people of her community, and I really appreciate that. And finally, with Michael, I had the opportunity to work with him at the Conference of Parties in Spain last year, and learning humor when we're in the middle of chaos, and finding a grounding when you really are invested in doing work for Indigenous people, and that when one of our tribes wins, we all win as Indigenous people. And I think that's something beautiful. This panel is all nations, but we're one heart in the work that we do. And that's something I acknowledge and thank. And I'm filled with a lot of gratitude. So when I make my list of things I'm grateful for tonight before I go to sleep, you all will be on that list. So with that, big thank you, Niall. I'm here from the Alaska Native Heritage Center. I appreciate you all for your time. Chancellor Drush will be joining us tomorrow for our last panel on the third day of our conference. And with that, thank you again. Good evening. I think you all are a couple hours ahead of us here. And I'll be turning it over to Mita DeWitt, who is the General Track Conference Coordinator, to do our closing for tonight. Thank you. Ganashish.
Sheesh, Maka. I've really appreciated the effort that Maka has put into thinking through good speakers to engage our youth and our future generations who will take on this work after us. And I really love working with Maka because she's just about a decade younger than I am. And so just to see her up and coming organizing and jumping right in and helping to deliver a virtual conference, and her can-do attitude and always positive and upbeat, and just it's been a pleasure working with you and everybody that you bring to the table, because we have just a top-notch group of people who are invigorating and inspiring and knowledgeable and real. And that's what we're learning to become again, as real people. That's what our ancestors and our elders have charged us with, is becoming real human beings again. And so that's been our focus for the conference, is who we are and protecting our way of being, so that way we can continue in perpetuity. And as long as we're being good stewards of the land, we can continue living on earth. And really, what does that take, right, in this process? So all of these voices together are help to learn from each other, help to build each other up, and also help to create networks, because as we know, right, with our traditional foods and our traditional work, many hands make light work. And so when we come together, that's lifting up of the spirit, and we can do this together. So if you're new today to the programming, or if you're new to the youth track just today, so you know, we have all of our presentations available on the media site website. So you can go in and you can look at yesterday's topics, and you can click on any one of those topics, and you can actually watch the video from yesterday. And then tomorrow, all of the videos from today will be available for you to watch. So if you just tuned in late, or if there's something you wanted to watch again, it's all of there available for you. And then we'll be actually migrating all of this content over to the Region 10 RTOC YouTube page. So that way, if you wanted to share with your community or tribal leaders the information or inspiration that's been available, it'll be there for you to share with your communities as well. So I'd like to invite everybody to come back tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. We're actually going to open up with Scott Mason, and he is the director of the American Indian Environmental Office, and he will be our keynote speaker at 9 a.m. So I hope you all have a wonderful evening. And as we say in Tlingit, it's kind of like go to bed when you talk to your kids, but it's also an endearment of good night. So nata de, good night.